Hello, I'm Michelle Powers, and this is a special edition of Currents News. It's been months since parishioners have prayed in the pews, but the Bishop of Brooklyn has a plan already in action. He says he wants to be ready when the time comes. Hear what's being done to get you back into a church. And an installation from a distance. The United States has a new Archbishop. The ceremony that would have had thousands just seated a handful. Plus a sad goodbye for the Diocese of Brooklyn, but 1 month in the making. Father Jorge Ortiz-Garay's body has made its way back to Mexico. And they're vital each and every day, but no more so than right now, our frontline nurses. We meet one that has battled a sickness for her entire life. All that and more on Currents News Special Edition. It's been months since Catholics have been able to step foot into their churches, given no choice but to watch daily masses on live streams. But Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio is leading a top-level team to work toward the day when Catholics can finally gather in the pews again. He wants the Brooklyn Diocese to be ready to go. Currents News' Emily Drooby has that story.
Churches across the Diocese of Brooklyn have been closed since March 20th because of the pandemic, but soon New York could begin to slowly reopen, and Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio is preparing.
We want to be ready to go as soon as we get the clearance. It's not going to be exactly the way it was when we stopped because of the need for social distancing.
The bishop has created a committee to figure out the logistics for when officials say it's safe to go back into churches, and he's tapped Joseph Esposito to chair it.
To get a head start and laying some ground rules on how we're going to do this.
We spoke with Esposito, who's also the former commissioner of the city's Office of Emergency Management.
So you go one sitting here.
While at St. Athanasius Church in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, he walked us through some of the logistics they'll be figuring out. Like how many people can fit at one time. There's many questions that need to be answered. How to avoid overcrowding, will masks and taking temperatures be required, what events will be allowed first, and how they're going to deal with communion.
Do we let the priest give out the host? Do we let the parishioners pick up the host? Do we bring it back at all?
They plan to have retired police officers and people from the medical field on the committee. It's by no means an easy task. Queens and Brooklyn are the two boroughs most affected by this deadly virus.
It's hitting us hard. We have some parishes where I know one parish is 75 to 85 parishioners. This was last week's count that have died.
But both Bishop DiMarzio and Esposito have confidence the committee will be able to come up with a good and safe plan.
I think we'll be ready for when the governor and the elected officials say it's good to go and open up.
Bishop DiMarzio even says he feels a sense of hope and relief from the discussions he's been a part of so far. In Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, Emily Drooby, Currents News.
Net TV, New York's Catholic station, has been providing live stream masses in 7 languages each and every day, while the public celebration in church has been suspended. You can find the full schedule at netny.tv. And a new shepherd is now leading the Archdiocese of Atlanta. His installation was traditional. How it was done was not. The pandemic and the need to stay apart made Atlanta's new Archbishop ceremony unlike any other before. Instead of thousands packing the Christ the King Cathedral on Wednesday, most of those in attendance looked on from the choir loft. Currents News' Emily Drooby has the story.
A historic moment, a socially distanced installation. An empty cathedral, no hugs or greetings, instead prayers for the sick.
For all those who suffer the consequences of the current pandemic.
That was the unique scene as Atlanta Archbishop Gregory HARTMAYER was installed, a new normal during the pandemic.
Those I love, those I revere, those I have been asked to tend in his name are not gathered around me. This cathedral is empty.
At the Cathedral of Christ the King in Atlanta, there were many differences from a traditional installation. Clergy stood a safe distance apart, while others, including Currents News, watched the live stream from home.
To the spiritual needs.
And the appointment decree from Pope Francis was read on video by his representative, Archbishop Christophe Pierre, who would normally be in the cathedral.
To serve faithfully.
But the new leader of Atlanta's Catholic Church was not discouraged.
There will be a time when we will gather together and celebrate.
The Archbishop is originally from Buffalo, New York. He's been the Bishop of Savannah, Georgia since 2011 and has spent a lot of time working in schools. He's now the 7th Archbishop of Atlanta. He's replacing Archbishop Wilton Gregory, who became the head of the Washington, D.C. Archdiocese last year. Atlanta has been without a leader for a year. National correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, thinks that could be a factor in holding the ceremony amid the pandemic.
Pope Francis, the Holy See, recognizes that we don't know how long these restrictions will last.
A much-needed church shepherd during a most unusual time for the church and the world. Emily Drooby, Currents News.
Brooklyn native and Bishop-elect Kevin Sweeney is still discussing plans and possibilities for his own installation. The pastor of St. Michael's Parish in Sunset Park is set to be the 8th bishop of the Diocese of Paterson, New Jersey. Stay tuned to Currents News for all updates on his journey. The Diocese of Brooklyn also finally said a very sad goodbye to one of its most beloved priests, Father Jorge Ortiz-Garay, a native of Mexico, believed to be the first Catholic priest in the United States to die from coronavirus, passed away nearly 2 months ago. But the pandemic has made transporting bodies across borders very difficult. Now, after weeks of waiting, his family in Mexico may soon get the closure they've been desperately waiting for. Emily Drooby has a story.
Father Jorge passed away, and here we are, starting the process of getting him home to his final resting place.
It's a bittersweet moment for Vincent LEVIEN, the director of external affairs at DESALES Media Group. LEVIEN formed the DESALES Emergency Task Force to help organizations in need during the pandemic. He says his team has been working for weeks to send the body of Brooklyn priest Father Jorge Ortiz-Garay back to his homeland of Mexico.
Thanks to Monsignor Harrington and Bishop DiMarzio, we literally worked every night and day to run through all the bureaucracy to make sure that Father Jorge could be home.
LEVIEN says the offices of New York Senator Chuck Schumer, Governor Andrew Cuomo, Mayor Bill de Blasio, U.S. Customs, Delta, and the Mexican consulate all played a role in making this happen.
If we got one thing wrong today, cargo, the flight, the manifest, the coffin, the logistics, Father Jorge doesn't get home. How are you?
Father Jorge was the beloved pastor of St. Bridget in Bushwick and coordinator of the ministry to Mexican immigrants. He died on March 27th from the coronavirus. At 49 years old, he's believed to be the first Catholic priest in the U.S. to lose his life to the virus. Father Jorge is known for putting his own health at risk to minister to his parishioners when the virus was starting to spread.
A lot of people, stayed in because they had to stay in. He chose to go out and help people because he knew those people needed the help.
On Sunday, Currents News was there as Father Jorge began his journey to his final resting place. It started with a blessing by Monsignor Kieran Harrington in front of the Scotto and Hire Funeral Home.
That's why this is important today. Yes, to give him respect for all of the work that he did, but ultimately also for the consolation of his mom and his dad, his siblings, his nieces and nephews.
Then a police escort to JFK and out to the tarmac, the captain coming out to pay his respects. With the utmost care, a solemn moment for many as the casket is loaded onto the plane. And then a final goodbye. Father Jorge Ortiz-Garay bound for Mexico City, but his legacy will forever live on in the Brooklyn Diocese.
Father Jorge was a very special, very special priest.
Emily Drooby, Currents News.
Father Jorge's body landed in Mexico on Wednesday. His family thanked the Diocese of Brooklyn profusely, saying they have been angels. And when we return on Currents News, a tribute to our own frontline heroes. We meet one woman who goes to work in the world's most dangerous place for her. Plus, coronavirus takes another victim, the much-loved Giglio feast. But Williamsburg hasn't missed its celebration since World War II. And dancing Franciscans, they go viral. Their moves can't be missed.
Now you can help us put your faith in the news. The next time you capture a newsworthy event, send us your pictures or video. It's easy. Go to netny.tv/send us, and you may see your submission on Currents News.
Nurses are always vital, no more so than in this year in the face of a pandemic. As part of National Nurses Week, Currents News is taking the time to honor those putting themselves on the line. We have the story of one woman who shows up to work each day despite the fact that for her, it could be the most dangerous place.
These are my nebulizers.
Megan DiBenedetto knows what it's like to gasp for air, to not have the lung capacity to even sit up.
Couldn't even get out of bed, which is not like me at all.
She's not a COVID-19 survivor. Instead, she's a cystic fibrosis warrior, battling a disease that only gets worse over time, even before she could stand in her own crib.
I was 9 months old when my mom found out.
News that changed her family's life. Their baby would always have persistent lung infections that would limit her ability to breathe. Meg's condition would flare up 27 years later, just as the coronavirus was brewing.
I dropped 20 pounds. My doctor was like, all right, we're just going to do a diabetes test. We're just going to see what's going on because you have no explanation of all this weight loss.
People with diabetes and cystic fibrosis are considered to be at high risk to the coronavirus. They've been advised to cocoon, to literally not leave their homes. But Meg isn't cocooning. She's flourishing in perhaps the most dangerous place for her. She's a nurse at NYU Langone, a hospital at the epicenter of the pandemic.
It's on my floor. It's not like I'm excluded. My whole hospital has it.
When New York had its first case, she thought about taking a leave of absence, and no one would blame her, but she hasn't. After years of her own suffering and nurses coming to her aid in surgeries and PICC lines, she's decided her spot is on the front line with her fellow nurses. She's trusting them to look out for her. So the nurses are really taking care of you and their patients.
They're doing everything they could, and it was very difficult. It's still kind of very difficult because I can't help them.
But she is helping them. Since Meg can't directly treat COVID patients, she's been doing everything else necessary to keep the hospital and her coworkers going, never letting a sickness get the best of her.
My parents kind of raised me that I was just like any other kid. The only thing is I had a really bad cough and I would get really out of breath.
They put their daughter in every sport, and Megan even went on to swim Division I. They still support her today, banging pots and pans at 7 o'clock each and every night. Just like in her own life, Megan has accepted the illness, and every day she fights to overcome it.
That's it. There's nowhere to run. You just have to deal with it.
This pandemic is no different. Sometimes, she says, you just have to run head on into your challenges. Since the crisis started, she's been taking long runs by her church, St. Bernadette, in Dyker Heights, just to stop and say a prayer. Not for herself, but for everyone else.
It's not about me and my sickness, it's now about them.
The coronavirus has taken another victim, but this one is vowing it will recover and come back stronger than ever. For more than a century, Brooklyn has reveled in the Giglio feast, a Catholic street fair like no other that has been great for both evangelization and fundraising. Although it's been canceled this year, Currents News' Jessica Easthope says Williamsburg isn't giving up yet.
Unprecedented times call for tough decisions.
As much as it's a painful decision to make, we had to make it.
For the first time since World War II, the Giglio will not dance in the sky above Williamsburg. But Our Lady of Mount Carmel pastor Monsignor Jamie Gigantiello knows the tradition will endure.
Next year, the feast is bigger and better than ever, and we're going to lift it through the sky.
For the last 117 years, thousands of men have carried the tradition on their shoulders, watching their fathers and grandfathers come up through the church and take on the task of lifting the 7-story 4-ton tower.
I would never know how close I would have stayed to the church growing up had I not been so drawn into the tradition.
Like many who participate, John PERRONE, a member of the feast committee, has since moved away from the old neighborhood. Every year, the feast takes him back.
It was the highlight of my summer as a kid, and I just grew more and more attracted to it.
The GIGLIO has watched the neighborhood change from 72 feet in the air. In recent years, new people meant having to recruit new lifters.
We wanted to share the tradition with other people who previously just might have thought that, hey, I need to know somebody to get in.
Now, Monsignor Jamie says it's time to make the GIGLIO feast part of the church's evangelization efforts once again.
All the young people question, what is it that these people are coming for? And maybe they'll say, you know, I want to be a part of that.
Monsignor Jamie's not worried about the life of the feast, but what is a concern is what happens to Our Lady of Mount Carmel without its biggest fundraiser during a year when churches are closed.
We rely on the profits of the feast to support the parish for the whole year.
The feast committee is now reaching out in different ways with raffles and donations to help meet its financial goal, all while keeping the real goal in mind.
That is our only goal, right? To continue its tradition, to keep our parish healthy, and to pass this on to the next generation.
For now, the GIGLIO remains on the ground, while the fate of this year's feast is still up in the air. Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Over in Italy, most of the country has begun easing up the restrictions of their coronavirus lockdown. The hope is that the move will reboot the country's crippled economy. In an exclusive report from Rome, Melissa Butts has the story that this new phase of Italian life is being welcomed, but it's also causing confusion.
After 55 days of lockdown, Italy's phase 2 has finally begun. It's marked by mandatory masks, open parks, restaurant takeout, and of course, social distancing. Masks and gloves are Italy's new normal as it enters into phase 2, allowing 4 million people to return to work. Public transportation has changed as the metro has certain areas blocked off and buses are allowed only half the normal number of riders. Restaurants are now open for takeout service for the first time in 2 months. Italians, deprived of their morning ritual for so long, drink their morning espresso in the street. While happy to serve, restaurant owners say they feel abandoned and in the dark.
Arrabbiato, rammaticato.
I'm angry, upset, and demoralized. We weren't told how to sanitize, what to do, what products to use, both for us and our clients. We don't know anything. We've been left in the dark. Athletes, on the other hand, are overjoyed as parks have reopened. Young and old alike pass alongside those who cut the overgrown grass. It's a sense of freedom. But freedom doesn't mean tranquility in the face of the coronavirus or agreement with this new phase. I'm honestly more worried than I was before the lockdown. I hope it will be better. With all these people out, maybe we haven't understood. It's like phase 1, but with a few differences. During the lockdown, tourism dropped 68% in Europe and 96% in Italy. It's estimated that from July to September 2020, no travel bans will cost 25 million tourists, making Italy's financial situation even tighter. It should get slightly better as shopping, museums, and exhibits reopen on May 18th and restaurants and hair salons on June 1st. While it's not how Italy was before the lockdown, it's a slow and steady step in the right direction. In Rome, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
Still to come on Currents News, Brooklyn and Queens are hungry, but one church makes sure both their body and soul are being fed. And do you miss dancing? Some Franciscans say you don't need a party to bust a move. Their fancy footwork is turning heads. In the Diocese of Brooklyn, Catholic Charities is fighting to keep those affected by the pandemic fed. But a church in Queens that hosted the latest food pantry event decided to take it one step further, making sure that both the body and the soul aren't left hungry. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has the story from Elmhurst.
Food is the most basic of necessities. Yet during this pandemic, so many don't have enough.
We don't work right now, so we needed some food for my kids.
Luis Espinoza has been unemployed for more than 2 months, which is why he came Friday to Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens pop-up food distribution at St. Bartholomew's in Elmhurst. He says he's been missing stability, but he's also been missing something else.
We come every Sunday here to the church. Now all the church is closed, so it's hard too.
Like Luis, thousands of others in the hardest hit communities like Elmhurst feel that same spiritual need, as well as a desperate and growing need to provide for their families.
We will run out of food today. There's no question. We packed for 1,200 bags. There's probably easily 700 more people in line after that.
You're going to stay 6 feet apart, okay? Go straight through.
Catholic Charities and St. Bartholomew's worked shoulder to shoulder to feed the body and nourish the soul.
Today we're doing the exposition of the Blessed Sacrament. We've given out 2,000 rosaries. It's just a reminder that while we need to be socially distant, Jesus isn't socially distant from his people.
Father Rick Buther says so far, more than 60 of his parishioners have died from coronavirus, a loss he's taking especially hard. He got sick himself.
I myself had the virus. Thank God it wasn't too serious, just loss of sense and smell and a lot of extra sleep.
Catholic Charities filled and gave away 1,200 bags of food Friday. Every few minutes, hundreds would make it in and out with days' worth of food. A service designed to help those in need turn a corner.
Feeding the hungry is something at our core in terms of serving the human dignity of every person.
In addition to food and comfort, people were also given information on where to find help. Lists of additional food pantries and where to get mental health services were handed out to everyone in line. In Elmhurst, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Go to ccbq.org for a complete list of nearly 20 other food pantries working with Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens. Also, there is information available about making behavioral and mental wellness telehealth appointments at ccbq.org, or you can call 718-722-6001. That's 718-722-6001. Finally tonight, who says a friar can't cut loose during quarantine? These Franciscan friars from San Antonio, Texas have gotten more than 20,000 views with their dance moves on the popular app TikTok. They're no strangers to the web. They participated in the Mannequin Challenge last year and have a podcast called The Brotherhood. The friars feel the fun videos are a way to spread happiness during this pandemic.
We thought it would be a cool idea to just reach out to the folks, give them a little joy, a little smile.
We're not able to be with each other physically, so social media has really filled this gap for us of being able to relate to each other.
They say reaching out to the youth is part of their vocation, and that doesn't stop, even in times like this. And that is Currents News. I'm Michelle Powers. Thank you for joining us for this special edition, because we are putting your faith in the news. Be sure to join Christine Persichetti every weeknight at 7 o'clock. We leave you now with some more of those viral videos from the Franciscan friars. Hope to see you again next time.
Wow, you can really dance. Wow, you can really dance. He went.
Run that, this how we